Hi, my name is Dr. Cirenza, Dr. Manny Cirenza. I've been practicing pediatrics here in the Saratoga region with Community Care Pediatrics Saratoga, part of Community Care Physicians, for over 25 years. And one of my roles now for the last 25 years has been to serve on the sidelines for football games at Saratoga Springs High School. After starting, I immediately met Coach Mike McGraw, who I'll introduce you to. And when I first met Coach McGraw, I noticed him, sometimes kind of moving a little bit more gingerly or slowly on the sidelines, and often bundling up. And so I asked him some questions about, why he was struggling. And I discovered really an incredible story that we're going to share with you today.
My name is Mike McGraw, and I'm a polio survivor. I had the disease prior to 1952 with the vaccine. And having said that, that incident has changed my life forever. Something suddenly happened. There was no indication that I had anything wrong with me, and it came on extremely quickly. And it was a situation where I got up one morning and I had to urinate, and I wasn't able to control it, where it was going and so on. And so I called my mother, and she came in and told me what she wanted me to do. And I said, I can't move my neck. I can't bend my neck. And I remember very vividly her screaming, "Oh my God," and calling my father, because she knew right away that that was a sign of polio, which was prevalent at that time. When we got to the hospital, I was immediately greeted by a group of medical people. And I'm not sure how many doctors or attendants or nurses or what they were, but I was taken to a ward, which was the polio ward. So from there, and this is where it gets a little difficult for me, because from there, I was in an iron lung, in and out for 9 months.
Polio was a fairly prevalent disease prior to the 1950s when we came up with the vaccine. And so what we do know about the history of polio and what we know about the natural evolution of polio is it is a virus. It's transmitted through fecal-oral transmission, basically, from either coughs, colds, or sometimes by handling diapers or stools. People would very often get it in watering holes, but it's a virus that basically attacks the nervous system and can cause paralysis. And what happens is essentially your muscles don't work. Mm-hmm. And the muscle that we breathe with is the diaphragm. And so if that muscle is affected by polio, we can't really breathe, we can't really move our lungs up and down. And so to help people breathe, they basically would put a negative pressure chamber around you, suck the air out of that so that your lungs could expand, and then allow the air back in so that your lungs could kind of contract.
I remember going into the iron lung, and to this day I can remember what the sound was when they closed the side door with a latch that I likened to on a foot locker. You know how sometimes kids, flip the foot locker and it makes that funny noise. And I can remember that vividly. I can also remember vividly the color. It was gold. And then when they got me in, they moved my head out, which was the only part of my body that was outside of the iron lung. And it was jagged rubber flexible things, so heads of various sizes could get out. And when I finally got my head out, I remember the nurse being very kind and rubbing my face to calm me down, because obviously
You were scared.
Scared, very scared and confused. Yes, there were periods of time where I'd be in and out of it, and I remember quite vividly that I'd be in it for a certain time period, and then it would be wheeled into an area where I from there would be transferred onto a metal gurney to take me into water therapy. And the therapy was equally as traumatic and scary for me as was going into the iron lung. What they would do is to put me on this metal gurney, and they would take me, they had a little ramp that would go into this swimming pool, but it was a therapy pool, like a big, like a big whirlpool, and they'd have attendants on both sides. I remember 4 attendants on both sides, and they'd take me down this ramp until the therapist had control of me, and then they would pull it out. It would be like slipping a boat. You know, they'd pull me out. Now, the therapist would have me, and they'd do different body manipulations and talk to me as I was going on. How does this feel? How are you doing with this? And whatever. And I kept telling them I can't feel anything when they had the left side, because obviously it was paralyzed. After the water therapy, the gurney would go back down into there, and they'd put me on it. Now I'm on a metal gurney, okay? And they'd pull me up and dry me off, and they'd turn me over so that my back was up, exposed, and they would put a woolen hot pack on it, which at first, you know, you could feel it hot. But as time went on, it lost its heat, and I'm assuming lost its effectiveness, and I felt like I had ants crawling all over me. And I didn't know whether to call out, or I didn't know whether to do that, because I was 8 years old and I was surrounded by adults. And it was kind of, at that time, obviously, children were taught to be seen and not heard. So I intuitively, as a young child, let the adults take over. And that was probably one of the most difficult things for me to endure, because I had to, you know, grit my teeth and just, you know, withstand what was the discomfort. After I left the hospital, I was home bound for, and I'm not really sure how long, but working on getting steps and getting moving around and doing things which I was able to feel that I was improving that each day. And I'm really not sure how long that took. But I remember then going back to school, and I think I was either in the 2nd or 3rd grade, and I remember a nurse coming in with a tray full of little paper cups with a sugar cube in, and we were told that this was the polio vaccine and that we were all to take it. And as she went around, there was no question at all about it. Each child took it, boom, and they were quite sober, very sober and solemn about this. And I remember them all sitting very, very tensely, knowing about this polio. And I can remember the nurse, you know, the starched white cap and the bib and the white shoes, and very, very medical-like. And she went around, and everybody took it, and the teacher said nothing about it, and we went right on with the day of school, and that was that.
You basically were given the latest oral polio vaccine
Yes,
that was
that's
available. Did you ever notice or know of anybody who ever, either refused that, or did you also ever notice anybody who ever got sick because they did that, or anything like that?
Absolutely not. There was a tremendous, I sensed an awareness, a cultural awareness and a cultural fear at that time period in history that people were very much fearful of that condition of polio, and were very receptive to taking the vaccine. I got polio to the best of my thinking from what my family told me is that my family had a camp on one of the Finger Lakes, and I spent a lot of time swimming, and I swam into the fall, into the late fall, and they attribute that action to my contraction of the disease.
Your parents, like, do you remember, or can you tell me anything about what that must have been like for them to go through that, to see their child experience this?
Well, when they would come into the hospital to visit, there was always a group of people that would meet, medical people, I'm not sure, doctors or nurses, and I always remember my mother crying, and I could see that, and I didn't understand it, and I could see them then. When my mother became emotional, they would turn to my father and explain things and do whatever. And they visited me pretty much every day, and it was the same routine. And they weren't allowed to spend a great deal of time with me. It was like you have a certain number of minutes, or whatever, because of the rules of the hospital and the largeness of the ward that I was in. I had trouble running, and I was always teased, belittled, and so forth by my peers, and it was really hurtful because I didn't understand why. I didn't know why I couldn't run like the other guys. I was a pretty good athlete, but I could do everything else but run, and that was something that I had to deal with all through that period of my life, through my teen years, and especially through my college years. It caused me a great deal of pain. I was in pain in my back all the time. I never understood why. And I was able to push through it and deal with it, and to accomplish some things which I feel now in retrospect very, very proud of. I was able to compete in sports through prep school I went to and college, and I found out that the catcher doesn't have to run as much, but as long as he has good small spatial dexterity, then he's got a job. And so I stuck to catching, and as I said, I had successes doing that through college, and I was very, very pleased with that, because obviously having a competitive nature and coming from an athletic family, I was very grateful for that. In college, as I was getting older, the pain was starting to increase as I was aging. I had a brother that was 6 years younger. He played basketball in Notre Dame, which is Division I, and was a tremendous athlete. I, on the other hand, had struggles and I always say that I had to work twice as hard to be half as good, because of, not knowing it at the time because of my restrictions of polio. Now, the restriction of polio, so I have been told since then, is that I have no discs through 2 through 5. And so that created a situation which I didn't understand until I was much older. After college, did it affect me? It absolutely, most certainly did. I had pain sometimes in my profession where the back pain sometimes became so severe that I would have to take a knee, or I couldn't stand up. And I never really understood why. Still not knowing, I mean, still realizing that I had polio, but not understanding the after effects of it. And that was a real handicap for me, because I just didn't understand why I was, feeling the way I was feeling.
And how about today?
Today, it affects me. It affects me quite seriously, because now we're getting some arthritis in there, and as we speak, I can feel it. The knives are starting to stick in, and I say that with no with no desire to be felt sorry for, or people to react to, or whatever, because I've learned to deal with it, and I've learned to deal with it as it is my normal. This pain is my normal, and I work very hard to keep it at bay. Many of my activities that I do, I have to wear a back brace, especially in my coaching, because I'm standing on my feet. I'm blessed that I find that works. I think obviously the exhilaration of me, being able to do what I love to do, kind of gets me, a little hyped up, so it takes my mind off the pain.
71 years since you've been diagnosed and still battling it now. And given the choice between having polio the way you have, or the opportunity to avoid it by taking a vaccine that came out, sadly, months after you were diagnosed, given the choice between those two things, which do you think, if you could do it, if you had that opportunity, would you have taken the vaccine?
In a heartbeat. Since I have been in the young people business since 1967, I'm completing 56 years, my heart is geared toward children. And I don't, children of all ages, but, and the statement you made is to do everything that we can to protect the innocent. And I say that because as an 8-year-old, I believe I was innocent and was thrust through a trauma that changed my life forever. And it's a continuum of change. My life is changing. I can feel it. I said to my wife the other day, I said, I can feel that my back is getting worse.
So in the 1950s, Dr. Sabin and Salk came out with both an oral live but weakened virus vaccine. That's the vaccine you referred to with the sugar cubes, as well as inactivated polio vaccine that's given as an injectable even to this day. Unfortunately, polio still exists in pockets, particularly Asia and Africa, underserved areas that are tough to get to. Because of this vaccine, we went from literally hundreds of thousands of Americans contracting polio every year to currently 0. I think we both can agree we'd prefer not to live in a world with polio and many of the other, vaccine preventable diseases. As much as we've told this story about polio, the same story really could be told about measles and the brain damage and the hearing damage that can cause, rubella and the birth defects that can cause, diphtheria and the childhood maladies and death that used to be able to cause. All these diseases used to be fairly prevalent, and with the advent of vaccine technology, we've been able to kind of stave those things off. And so I think we can both agree that we feel blessed at the work of those scientists and the availability that we have of these vaccines to really help us avoid these horrible diseases and these experiences that you had in your case with polio.
Yeah, I don't mean to give a trite phrase, but this is just me, and I'm talking only about me, is that I am very adamant about following the science. And I know that's a well-known phrase and whatever, but I couldn't imagine how I would feel if I were connected in any way, whether it be through my profession or any way with a child that was dealing with this. I am adamant about myself, just me, about getting vaccines for whatever's out there to get it for. And I'm very fortunate to have a daughter who is on the front lines and very aware of these kinds of things through her profession, to guide her father and mother to, what they need to have for preventing these sicknesses and diseases.
So who are some of the heroes? Who are some of the people that made a big difference for you?
But when I really discovered that I had a problem with it is when I went to David Gabay, who was a chiropractor. He's since retired. And when he first came to Saratoga, I said, I've got to, start my journey on doing something about this. And so I went to him, and he, gave me an assessment. And he said, did you know that your left side is significantly, leg is shorter than your right side? And I said, well, and he said, well, and we finally got to the fact that I had polio. And he said, well, that's the deal. And he says, that's the way we have to go. So then he referred me to a orthotic group down on Central Avenue, Art and Tammy Schmuckler. They got me into custom-made shoes, both running shoes and inserts and orthotics and all of that, and I was with them for an extended period of time. I also have to thank Marty Ferrillo, Dr. Ferrillo, for his work with me on shots for pain management. And there are two surgeons in the Albany area. One of them is Dr. Gomez, and I hope that I'm correct, that the other doctor was Dr. McCormick. But I have to be tremendously thankful, not only to them, doctor, but to the entire medical community that I am exposed to here in Saratoga. I've been blessed beyond what I can express here about the wonderful care that I've gotten, and helped me do the best I can. I have to look back on this thing now as that it was a gift poorly wrapped. And I say that because it gave me a certain toughness that I needed to get through things in my life, whatever they were. And that's how I have to look at it now, because I have to stay positive. I can't stay negative. One of my big mantras is I have to live in the solution, and I can't live in the problem.
Coach Mike McGraw, you have a story to share with us today, one that, we're grateful that you were able to tell us and share with us, one that you know, we want to make sure we get a chance to know and share and understand. We're grateful for that opportunity, and I'm grateful just for the privilege of knowing you and knowing now what your story is, you know, what's behind kind of, you know, everything that I see about you. And, you know, today I've come, you know, to kind of love and respect you that much more for knowing that story. So thank you.
Thank you very much.